Hi, I'm Raj Kumar, President and Editor-in-Chief of Devex, here in Brussels at the European Development Days, and joined by Nirj Deva, who is, of course, a member of the European Parliament, Vice Chairman of the Development Committee. You hail from the UK, you're a member of the Conservative Party, and we've had a chance to meet a few years back, and I recall some of your thoughts on development and the changes you see that are required in the way development assistance is done. Give me a sense of what is the conservative view on development aid in the European Parliament? What is the message you're trying to get through?
Well, there isn't a particular conservative view as such in the European Parliament, but there is certainly a conservative view across the board for conservatives. For about 15 to 20 years before this, there was a consensus about aid. There was this feeling that aid is the way forward and that we should benchmark it 0.7 of GNP and so on. My party leaders and myself have argued to keep that, and we have ring-fenced that, and that has been now a sibboleth which the Conservative Party protects against certain opposition from our own membership.
Sure, in the UK, as you're cutting other programs, the government has held the aid budget strong.
But because we are doing that, there is a questioning of whether this is the right thing to do, i.e. not whether it should 0.7% or 1% or whatever, but whether aid as such is the way forward, because there are certain countries in the world, especially in East Asia and China, where they've lifted 300 million people out of poverty in China and 150 million people out of poverty in Southeast Asia without aid from anybody. So the question is now being asked, especially in straitened circumstances in Europe, where the European taxpayer and the British taxpayer is groaning under the weight of the recession and debt and so on, whether the continuation of aid is the way forward, and the answer really is that we need to look at new ways of funding and thinking about development.
Are you talking about cutting aid, or are you saying use the aid we have already but in a different way?
No, I mean, one of the things that has grown to be attractive is what I'm going to say next, and that is, I'm going to say it in a rather mischievous way. I'm going to say I have a dream.
Yeah.
In my dream, you give me a barren piece of land with nothing on it. No towns, no cities, no schools, no hospitals, no roads, nothing. And then you tell me to people it with the world's refugees. And they come in their millions, carrying only what they have in their hands. There's no IMF, there's no World Bank, there's no EU, there's no USAID, there's nothing. It's them and the barren piece of land. And in 100 years, they turn this barren piece of land into the richest country in the world. How did they do it?
You tell me.
Where do you live?
In the US?
Well, how did you do it?
Yeah. Well, I think the US history, I see your point, certainly. But US history, like European history, is perhaps different than the state of affairs in sub-Saharan Africa, for example.
The people who came to the United States 200 years ago, carrying sacks over their backs, were as ill-educated and poorly educated as anybody in Africa is today. So, how did they turn this barren piece of land into, today, the United States of America, the richest country in the world? How?
Yeah, well,
how?
I think, my own view, is that the United States developed in part because of natural resources, human ingenuity, democracy, but it wouldn't be fair to say it was not a peopled land, or that we did not have a troubled history of our own, as did, I think, most of Europe.
Yeah, but you're still not answering the question. And I'm going to pin you down onto this platform.
You're going to say entrepreneurs.
How did they do it? Are there no entrepreneurs in Asia? Are there no entrepreneurs in Africa?
Yeah.
So why are they not doing it?
But is your argument then that there should not be a development aid budget?
No. My answer comes from the answer you're about to give me.
Which is?
How did they do it?
I don't know the answer you're looking for, I'm afraid.
They were given property rights, a legal system which enabled physical assets to be turned into wealth, into capital, and the capital to be turned into securitizable wealth. So a barren piece of land could be turned into a mortgage, the mortgage to be turned into a security, the security to be bundled and floated on the stock exchange and become a physical equity, creating wealth. And it starts with you being able to register your property and being given a title deed which you can take to your bank manager and raise a loan on. Or when you start a small company, the company is registered, its books are accounted for and certificated, its profit is quantified, and it's given a value in itself.
So if we stipulate that property rights are key to development,
now go to Africa. Who owns the land? Right, Kumar, who owns the land?
Well, I think it varies a lot country by country within Africa, and there is growing property rights within Africa. But there are communal lands still in some countries.
Lands are held by chiefs or communally or by the government. Nobody owns anything. So they're all poor. They have no property rights. You see millions and millions of small businesses dotted about the place, repairing bicycles, motorcycles, wristwatches, leather goods. Where are they registered? How much is the value? What's the value? You see slums standing next to high-rise apartment blocks. The high-rise apartment block, a square foot, is $2,000. And the slum next door, how much?
Yeah.
Nothing.
I see your point. And I wonder what that translates into from a policy standpoint.
It translates into $7 trillion of unrecorded wealth.
And what would you have, we're here at the European Development Days, a Europe Aid event, what would you have Europe Aid
I'm doing
and
a
the
report
Commission
for the Parliament. Well, I'm going to stipulate, having said what I said just now, that the European Commission will henceforth give aid conditionally upon property rights being established.
And do you have a sense so far, I know you talked to Andres Pilbags and others in the Commission, what the reaction to that view is?
Absolutely delighted. In fact, I shouldn't reveal this, but Andres and I are writing a book together on this issue. We're coming from Eastern Europe, where everything was owned by the communist state and under the Soviet Union. He understands how they released the value of property and land and so on, and turned people into stakeholders and owners of that. So he understands that instinctively. Whereas here in Western Europe, we've forgotten. We take for granted that we own our own property because
air we breathe.
Because we own a title deed. But how did the title deed come into play?
So would it be for Devex members watching this, you're the vice chairman of the development committee, is there a real sense that we may see policy change in the European Commission on this issue?
I'm determined that it shall be so. And I have all the cooperation from the Commission on this, because they realize that this pot of money that we keep spending is shrinking. And the taxpayer is going to start saying, no, we've done enough, especially when they have to shut their own schools and hospitals down in our own member states. So we have to find new ways of doing these things. And if there's $7 trillion worth of untapped capital sitting in the developing countries which cannot be used because we haven't recorded it and made it a legal entity and put it on the right side of the legal divide, so it is a part of a legally registered property rather than not illegal but unregistered property, then it's a simple shift to register the property, give it value, and then there's equity.
It's a powerful argument, and I think it's the one that we'll follow closely, particularly given your role and the European Commission changing on this. Our members are going to be very interested in hearing.
And of course the left, which I thought wouldn't come along on the ride with me, has jumped on my bandwagon because they've realized that that's the only way to stop communal land in Africa being given what they call land grabbing. Large tracts of land have been given by chiefs overriding the wishes of his own people to foreign entities, so that those foreign entities and those foreign countries can have food security by growing their own food and exporting it back to the Middle East, whereas the local people are starving. So, hey.
So you have a left-right continuum coming together on this issue of property rights. It's fascinating, and I appreciate you spending some time with us to talk about it today. Thank you for, of course, being here. And we look forward to following this story.
Thank you.
Thank you.